Hey, Sean, is this working?
Yes, sir, it is.
All righty.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. This is Namit Mehta from PwC. Nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you. Sean Reed with the Acadiana Planning Commission. We'll be joined in a second by Chad Lacombe, who is the project manager for this.
Okay.
And we'll wait a little bit because I think we've got quite a few more people that are going to be logging in here.
Yes,
Awesome.
and Ramesh from the university, our university partner, is joining us too.
I'm here.
Hey, just verifying everybody can see my screen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give everybody another minute or two to get logged in. I see a couple people logging in, so, and then we can begin. Hey, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us. My name is Chad Lacombe. I work with the Acadiana Planning Commission, and I am a senior economic development planner for the Acadiana Planning Commission. Just to give you a little background on this particular project, APC was awarded a EDA planning grant to develop out a biopharmaceutical manufacturing cluster in the Acadiana region. To be a short overview, I'd like to invite Rachel Godo, our Economic Development and Community Development Director, to kind of tell us a little bit about the Acadiana Planning Commission, and then we'll introduce all of our project team on our end, which includes our partners at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. Rachel, you can kind of take it here from the audio side.
Thanks, Chad. Just welcome everybody. I want to thank everybody for their interest in this particular RFP, and we look forward to getting some really good responses on this particular project. So Acadian, I'll talk a little bit about APC. So Acadiana Planning Commission, we are one of 8 planning districts throughout the state of Louisiana, and we serve it's a regional organization that serves 7 parishes: Acadia, Evangeline, Iberia, Lafayette, St. Landry, St. Martin, and Vermilion. And we have quite a bit of robust programming. Some of you might be familiar with COGS across the nation, but our councils of governments, and we represent these particular parishes in a number of different arenas or different fields, such as drainage, economic development, which is evidenced by this particular RFP here with economic cluster development. We also are heavily involved in transportation and transportation planning on the urbanized level. We facilitate the Metropolitan Planning Organization as APC, and then brownfields is another area that we've been highly involved in, and quite a few other different aspects. And I think the value that we bring to not only our governments but to some of our economic development organizations is just building the capacity of our region, and especially in the more rural areas where there's a lot of varying needs, especially like lack of capacity, lack of resources. So we try to provide and or facilitate different programming to help build our rural economies and support our partners in the rural areas as well as our major urban areas as well. So with that, I'm going to ask Chad too, if we could get everybody's name that's on the call and maybe an email address. So if we need to circle back with anybody, it might be good to have that information if we don't already, for those who have joined and we didn't communicate with directly. So if you could just drop your name, chat, maybe affiliation in the name, email in the chat, that would be great. And then Chad, you wanted to do roundtable introductions of everybody?
I want to do an introduction of all of our project team, and this pretty much covers the APC side. I'd like to now invite our UL partners, and starting with Dr. Ramesh, with the Vice President of Research at UL Lafayette, and then Ms. Jane from the New Iberia Research Center.
And Chad, sorry, we do have Sean with.
Oh, and Sean, I'm sorry. Well, Sean did introduce everybody in the beginning, so
okay, good.
as part of our team. On our side, it's Rachel Godo, Chad Lacombe, and Sean Reed on the APC side.
Excellent. Thank you, Chad. Thank you, Rachel. My name is Ramesh Koluru. I'm Vice President for Research, Innovation, and Economic Development at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. Been in this role for about 10 years or so. And the university is a Carnegie top-tier research university, has recently earned that designation, being in the top 3% of the universities in the country, is a top 100 public university across in the United States. And as any public university would and should, our focus is to take all that we do well at the university in terms of our research and innovation capacity and intentionally channel that to create economic development outcomes in the community, in the state, in the nation, and beyond. And as such, on a routine basis, whenever we do it right, we partner with the Acadiana Planning Commission, because they have, as Rachel and Chad said in their opening comments, they have a multi-parish, multi-county impact in the region, and have the extraordinary ability to partner with the university to create and envision these kinds of economic development projects that we are inviting you to partner and collaborate with us on as we go forward into this conversation. So, but before I hand it off to Jane, I want to also note that the university is home to the nation's largest non-human primate center, called the New Iberia Research Center, that is indeed the crown jewel of our research operations. The university recently hit about $200 million in our annual R&D expenditures, close to, and the New Iberia Research Center that Jane is part of, that Ms. Jane Fontenot, as the Associate Director of that center, contributes about a third of those R&D expenditures. So on an annual basis, they might do anywhere from $60 to $75 million in research expenditures, working with NIH and a variety of our private sector partners, many of whom all of you on this call, I'm sure, have heard of, have worked with, know of, certainly. And so we've worked with major biopharmaceutical companies over the past 3 to 4 decades. And what we are now trying to embark upon, and it'll come across in the vision that we will paint as a picture in the next few minutes, is to translate our research and innovation capacity, our work in the development of vaccines and therapeutics for infectious disease and others, to translate that into a major economic development impact that we would have on the region and beyond. So with that, I'll pause and transition to Jane so that she can clean up my mess, as she always does, and and then get back everyone on the agenda, because I know that Chad likes to keep a run a tight ship. So I'm sure he has an agenda prepared, and I've already messed it up. So over to you, Jane.
Hi, I'm Jane Fontenot. I have the pleasure of being the Associate Director of New Iberia Research Center and Director of Contract Research here at the university. Our facility actually is quite instrumental in the R&D space for drug development, biological developments. We have a strong academic program too, focusing on infectious disease. Our client base, as Dr. Kolaru said, is some of the largest companies in the world. We also have a very strong alliance with startup companies as well. We historically have not advertised for clients. Word of mouth is our best way to get in new people. And it's an exciting time for us. We actually have been doing contract research for a while. And this is one of the things that we committed to doing well. So for us, it's an expansion of our current business structure, our current capabilities to even get more involved in development of new therapeutics. We're really excited about this project. And we do have more than 10,000 non-human primates, which puts us in a great strategic space within the research community. And Dr. Kolaru did such a good job on everything else. I think that's it.
Oh, thanks, Jane. You're not paid that well to say those things about me, but that's good. All right, back to you, Chad. I know you had some outline of an agenda.
Yes, well, and to give you a better sense of who we are and where we are as a region, the Acadiana region represents 7 parishes and a total population just over 600,000. In the heart of and right along the Louisiana chemical manufacturing corridor. That presents a unique opportunity from a supply chain perspective, we feel, in terms of access to both upstream and downstream chemicals, in building out a pharmaceutical manufacturing cluster. That is one of the resources we would like to leverage is the region's transportation infrastructure, which includes rail, port, 2 major intersecting interstates, as well as several other major 4-lane highways that serve both the New Iberia Research Center and also the proposed contract manufacturing facility. I want next, Jane, to go a little bit deeper into the types of research that they're doing and also their planned expansion into creating a new biosafety level 3 laboratory at New Iberia Research Center, which would expand the capabilities on the contract research end and is a leverageable resource that we believe that would help build out this biopharmaceutical manufacturing cluster.
So our current infrastructure is focused on provision of capabilities in non-human primate model development. It would be for any new investigator with a great idea, a new potential therapeutic, they actually enter into lower species. You have to do rodent research. You have to do proof of concept before you get into non-human primates. At that non-human primate state, this part is actually required by law. The FDA requires that you actually perform animal studies in at least 2 species. So we do a lot of very critical research before you go into the clinical space, the human clinical trials. Whenever we were working on the COVID vaccines, we were very proud to use our capabilities and our background in infectious disease in vaccines, efficacy testing. We do monoclonal research. The imaging capabilities that we have on site right now is actually working on where do biological compounds go? How do they work? What's happening at the mucosal surfaces? So we're learning a lot as we go through all of these different processes. And with the manufacturing organization, it'll be a great business opportunity, kind of in a business incubator spirit. The plan is to use us as a beginning point, expand our capabilities to potentially include rodent models, go through non-human primates, and facilitate new startup companies to actually be able to take all those steps and go into the FDA compliant clinical trial category. So it's tying in everything as a business incubator through all those different animal models.
Okay, Ramesh, I'm going to ask you to speak to the new contract manufacturing organization that's been funded by the legislature. and an overall project vision for how where you see this going and what's been pitched.
Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, Jane, for setting that stage. Going back to what Jane was saying, to pick up from that, during COVID-19, we worked with several companies that were part of the Operation Warp Speed, as several of you are familiar with, including Pfizer and Merck and several other partners that we worked with for the past 30 to 40 years. And they came to us at the university, to the New Iberia Research Center, knowing fully well that we did not have a biosafety level 3 facility at that time. But they came to us knowing that they were our partners and we could get it done. We could get their work done. And we did. For example, I'm sure all of you are familiar with the fact that Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine was the nation's first EUA emergency use authorization, had won that, and became a solution to for all of us to fight against COVID-19. And researchers from Pfizer-BioNTech worked with the center staff for multiple months with on the immunogenicity side of the work, on the safety and the efficacy side of the work before we got to the challenge phase of the project, where we actually had to expose these monkeys, these non-human primates, with this immunity because of the vaccine, but to test that against the actual virus itself. At that time, we did not have a biosafety level 3 facility, so we had to literally put these animals on the road and drive them to facilities that were available throughout the nation to address the challenge phase of the project, to make sure that that the vaccine had enough potency and enough capability to help ward off and fight the virus. And we were able to do that. And that, as you can imagine, that process of having to put the monkeys on the road and expose them to the actual virus itself cost us about a bit of time. In reality, about 3 months of delay that got included in the process of the vaccine development, that at a time, as you may recall, in the October 2020 through January 2021 timeframe, when across the United States, across the globe, on a daily basis, thousands of lives were getting lost. And but in the aftermath of that effort, we went to the state legislature to make a case that we needed their investment into the center, and got a $25 million appropriation from the state to help expand our capacity and infrastructure to include a biosafety level 3 facility, which will, the development of that capacity will begin in the next month or so. And within the next 18 months, we would have that capacity stood up within the center. Jane also mentioned that we have about 10,000 non-human primates. When I started about less than a decade ago, we were at about 5,200 non-human primates. And it is our goal to get to about 15,000 non-human primates so that as a nation, we can reduce our dependency on animal exports from non-human primate exports from China and other parts of the globe. Again, at the beginning of COVID, as several of you may know, China stopped their export of non-human primates to the United States, especially transportation of animals to the US for biomedical research is getting smaller and smaller on a daily basis, as you know. So in many ways, we've outsourced our national security and our ability to innovate in the United States over to China and other parts of the globe in biomedical research, in even the availability of animal models. And that's something that we are wanting to be the bulwarks against. So we are continually expanding our capacity at the university to grow our animal census, number one. We've expanded our biosafety level capacity to include this BSL-3 capability now, so that we could have at the location where we have, as in the United States, the nation's largest supply. When I say we have the largest number of monkeys at the center, that means nothing to anyone other than the fact that we now have the largest supply of non-human primates available for biomedical research in the United States at any one location. So it's not to just address our needs at the center, it is to address national needs, it is to address NIHS needs, it is to address our partner academics and researchers from across the United States, rather across the globe, who need access to animals to conduct and advance their biomedical research pursuits. It is also to partner with our private sector, large and small companies that have been involved or wanting to get involved in biomedical research to continue to produce innovations, as you see happen and fostered by the university across the globe. One of the things that I love about my university is that we don't let the not invented here get in the way. It's not just about doing our own laundry. We don't mind doing someone else's laundry as well. We don't mind helping others realize their ideas, realize their vision and their capacities by partnering with them. Unlike many universities that I work with, I know of, and that I collaborate with on a daily basis, that kind of sort of are focused on their research and their PIs and so on, as they should. But we are here cut from a different cloth because we want to not only work for our researchers and with our researchers, but researchers and pursuing science and advancing of that across the globe. But all of these capacities and capabilities brought us to a place where we began conversations before COVID and after COVID with our private sector partners saying, we want you to do more with us. We don't want you to come just use our monkeys to do your research. But as several of you may be aware, Louisiana ranks at the bottom of many health outcomes. We rank at the top of quality of life. We love to party. Mardi Gras in Louisiana is something to behold of. But that means that we also have access to a large population of disease pathologies and people that can be enrolled in clinical trials and so on. But we don't rank very high in clinical innovation. But that's something that we are seeking to address. But building of this manufacturing, contract drug manufacturing operation is something that goes to extend the ecosystem. For 3 decades, we've served the biomedical research and biomedical industry operating as a contract research organization through what it is that Jane Fontenot and her team have built at the New Iberia Research Center. So much along those that same vein of expanding contract research capacities of the university, we are seeking to now partner with a contract drug manufacturing operation so we can serve the same clients or maybe other clients and beyond to help with drug discovery and drug manufacturing and formulation and getting involved in animal model testing, possibly even go beyond animal testing to include phase 1, phase 2 clinical trials. And as all of you know, this process is not linear, it is iterative, and having a capacity to manufacture the biologics, manufacture the therapeutics that we test and we formulate within the New Iberia Research Center, but do the manufacturing of those biologics within this contract drug manufacturing operation that we are envisioning here is an extraordinary opportunity. And so we reached out to the legislature. At the same time, we did request funding for the expansion to biosafety level 3 facility. We also urged the legislature to invest funding into the establishment of a contract drug manufacturing operation that the university would lead, but we are in the research business. We are not in the manufacturing business. So at some point, we would want to team up with the company with expertise as a CDMO and recruit them to this facility, to this location, so that they could help us run and establish a partnership with that company. That to us is an economic diversification opportunity because we want to add some permanent jobs here. It is a public health imperative because we want to be able to serve and support the nation through the availability of pharmaceuticals, but it also is a national security imperative for those of you that are very familiar with this industry. We've outsourced our pharmaceutical manufacturing to China and have become dependent in a big way, but we are not there in the context of biologics just yet, as we are in the case of pharmaceuticals. So this would be a bulwark against exportation or outsourcing of American biologics manufacturing to China by continuing to build this capacity here in Louisiana and in the United States, so that we can build those manufacturing of biologics, biopharmaceuticals here in the United States, and take advantage of all that Chad had talked about before in the context of a workforce, in the context of supply chains, in the context of logistics, and the advantages that that this LED certified site has in South Louisiana. LED is the Louisiana Department of Economic Development. And so that's our vision in a nutshell. I know it's a big nutshell. I apologize. I may have put us behind schedule, but over to you, Chad.
Okay, and let me transition now before we get into the scope to emphasize that where we got here was working with UL and a number of other private sector partners. We had submitted a Build Back Better challenge grant application. Even though we were not funded, EDA encouraged us to resubmit as a planning grant, which is what's the funding for this RFQ. The planning grant is to help develop out a biopharmaceutical manufacturing cluster that leverages the resources at the New Iberia Research Center and the investment the state is making at NERC, as well as the funding, that the seed money they've given us for the new contract manufacturing facility. One of the things in our analysis initially that we did when we were looking at building a Build Back Better grant application is we identified one of the major pain points and the need for the scale up capability that a contract manufacturing organization would bring to a potential cluster. And that could also serve as a test bed facility and a source of innovation on the production side and the scaling of manufacturing, while also supplying the need to bring home or reshore the manufacturing of biopharmaceutical products and build a competitive edge in our region. The other thing that we identified really early on is we do have a lot of chemical manufacturing assets in Louisiana with a strong tie and historic workforce that's linked to a really concentration of chemical engineers and process engineers that are tied to chemical manufacturing, and biopharmaceuticals being a form of chemical manufacturing. So with that, I'm going to transition over to the scope, because the scope for this particular project centers really on leveraging the New Iberia Research Center. And we've broken these deliverables into 3 tasks. The first is a multi-region supply chain analysis and map. And that's to identify the potential partners in a supply chain that's regional or super regional, where we can pull down the cost, particularly on the transportation side, for manufacturers that could be using the contract manufacturing organization. So that's working closely. One of the tasks is working closely with Jane Fontenot and Francois Villinger, who wasn't able to join us as the directors of the New Iberia Research Center, to see what their expertise is and really use and leverage the relationships they've built as the basis for the contract manufacturing organization. The next step would be, we envision, is a supply chain analysis for those classes of products that they're already working with, the customers that they already have, to help them scale up to production for those next phases of clinical trials. And another part is to just basically create a matrix of potential feedstocks that could go into the manufacturing of those products and the raw materials that are needed, including things like buffers and packaging and the things that go into injectables, if we're looking at injectables, that can get us closer to a finished product on the backside. And then really map out these sources that are within reasonable transportation distances, so that we have a predetermined package that we could bring to a potential partner, private sector partner. And then develop a list of potential products that are multi-regional and could form the basis of the supply chain. The second task we have is to really develop a targeted industry strategy that identifies potential end products and manufacturers who align with what we're trying to do. And that's a prioritized list of potential biopharmaceutical products that could be made at this contract manufacturing organization. And that goes to how we equip and design the facility. We haven't started the design phase yet, and we really want to build a facility that best meets the market and the sweet spot with the relationships that have already been built at the New Iberia Research Center. And then identify a matrix of potential products just by classes and people who make those products. And this could be working closely with the New Iberia Research Center as their partners, as filling out this matrix. And thirdly, we want to look at potential ownership models and their strengths and weaknesses based on the classes. And that the contract manufacturing organization is using state dollars on public property to build a facility. We want to look at what are the best practices or case studies on what is the best fit for the management model based on the types of products that could be made there. And this could be everything from completely university owned and operated to university owned and a private sector operator, or a private sector owned and operated model, or hybrids of these two, and then an evaluation of the strengths and weaknesses of these different models of operation and management. That in a nutshell is what the project deliverables will look like. We expect a report at the end that kind of provides the detail and the data and analysis that support the final conclusions and recommendations. General timeline, we issued the RFP on November 2nd. This is today, the pre-bid conference. November 11th, we're gonna leave open and let everybody email us questions if you have any follow-up questions based on the tasks that are outlined in the scope. And then we'll publish the responses to these questions so that everybody can view them and have the benefit of the responses to our website, where the same place that is published, the RFQ is published. And then the final deadline for RFQ submissions is December 2nd, which is roughly 3.5 weeks from now. And then we will narrow the list down to 2 or 3 finalists and schedule follow-up interviews if needed. And then we anticipate announcing the selection on December 12th, which is our regular board meeting, the APC board meeting. Since we're using federal funds, we're following federal and state procurement guidelines. And we expect the start date of the project to be in January 15th, which gives us about a month of contract negotiation time. I know it's over the holidays. And then we anticipate completion of the final deliverables and project report by June 15th, 2023. Okay, I will now open the floor to questions if anybody wants to jump in, or can you drop them in the chat? And anyone from our team is capable of answering.
One point that I forgot to mention or clarify earlier is that just like we received $25 million for the biosafety level 3 upgrade, the state's investment into the CDMO, into the contract drug manufacturing operation, is at $25 million currently. We know that that's perhaps not adequate to build a manufacturing operation at the scale that we envision to address the trifecta of job creation, of public health, and national security that we seek to impact through this investment. So in about a half hour, I'm sitting in an auditorium getting ready for a meeting with Senator Cassidy, our senior senator from the U.S. To the U.S. Congress, and I and a few of our community leaders, one of whom is here already, will be making a request to help facilitate federal funding into this. And so it is our goal to raise about $75 million to fully build out and equip this CDMO. So as you envision your responses, you might want to think about something along those lines as the potential for overall between state and federal dollars. And before you ask questions, I want to really thank APC for the outreach, and also the caliber of consultants, all of you that have come to participate in this process. And I'm going to urge you to do the best that you can to help us, because this will be the first CDMO in all of Louisiana. So we want to do it right. The governor, when he supported this project. He wants to do it right. He talks about this as his legacy project. He is at the end of his term, and he wants to make sure that this is something that we do right, so that as a state, he'll have something that he can point to as what we've done together in the aftermath of COVID-19. That's all I had.
So not to actually keep going specifically into COVID-19, but something I failed to say in the process was we helped in the evaluation of 11 different manufacturers' COVID vaccines. And whenever it all came down to it, the first to market was the one who had the best ability to actually get into animal models and get the testing done. So we would be able to definitely move that needle more so into the direction of rapidity to get good research approved and out there. And another major point too is we are also a CDC import quarantine facility. So while we have a very, very large on-site presence of non-human primates, we also have a collaborative network that we can still import animals from outside the United States. So we're really in a good strategic position. I just wanted to add that in there.
And I'll add, they're located on or adjacent to the Acadiana Regional Airport, which has an 8,000-foot runway and can land just about any type of aircraft.
And the manufacturing operation would be located just about 1.5 miles downstream from the research center. And it is our vision that we build out an ecosystem, obviously, that is anchored around a major university-based research program where we would have the ability to both benefit from and contribute to the development of the ecosystem. So if we envision what we manufacture at the CDMO to be what we'll have tested at and formulated either by ourselves or in partnership with our NIH partners or private sector partners, but also what is manufactured or who we recruit into the region to help manufacture these biologics or therapeutics could also expand the footprint and the R&D focus and scope of what we do at the center. So this is an ecosystem building project for us, anchored around an extraordinary research asset that is not able to be replicated. No other university in the United States can build the nation's largest non-human primate center tomorrow, even if they had multi-billion-dollar donor support. So this is a unique asset that is available to us, and we want to maximize its opportunity.
Yes, so this is Namit Mehta from PwC. First of all, thank you, and really appreciate all the work you guys are doing. So I think this is helping us as a human population. So really, really appreciate all the work you've done for the COVID vaccine and all of the things you're doing. Just a question in terms of milestones. You talked about the project milestones, but from a CDMO, in extending at the CDMO, what are the milestones you're looking for in the next 2, 3, whatever years you're thinking about?
I mean, so the EDA project, the milestones that that Chad had put up are what we have to meet the obligations with the EDA. Okay. But also our it is strategic that the timelines there are the way they are because they'll help inform our next steps in the development of funding opportunities, in the identification of who the private sector partner might be that we will select as the CDMO, and to Chad's deliverables that he'd identified. We know, I mean, Jane and the team at the New Iberia Research Center know what kind of biologics, what kinds of therapeutics across those 12 companies that she talked about that were involved in Operation Warp Speed and beyond during COVID-19. But even beyond that, I mean, the kinds of clients that are coming to the center that we are working with in the context of expanded beyond infectious disease into metabolic lifestyle diseases and cancers and so on and so forth, with mRNA formulations, monoclonal antibody development and testing, et cetera, et cetera. So now, as I look at it, Namit and the rest of the group, this is somewhat of a blue ocean, right? So we could go any number of vectors, any number of directions with this, but to address the trifecta of national security, economic development, and public health. My conversation, a previous conversation with Senator Cassidy was, where do we have the greatest risk? Where do we have the greatest dependency on China and other actors whose whose values are not necessarily aligned with the United States. What is the United States government? We know that, I mean, the numbers are not very clear yet, but 72% of API development, the US depends on China.
Yep.
But we know that there's no real registries, and China does quite a bit with India, and we import as the United States a lot from India. So that number 72 could be higher. But so we want to know through your experiences of whoever we select as a consultant to help us guide through this process, and whoever is willing to work with us, we want to know where might be the greatest opportunities in that space. So this timeline impacts of these contract deliverables here as part of the EDA funded project, planning project, help the various gating items that we have, the various forks in the road that we might pursue going forward, so that before we make any of those decisions, this process here over the next few months helps us make those go, no go, go left versus go right kinds of decisions that we have to make, if that makes sense. I know Rachel's hand is up, so she will help clean up everything that I have said here. Go ahead, Rachel. Maybe not. Maybe not.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, if I had my hand up, I didn't mean to.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'll jump in, Ramesh.
And that was good enough.
The critical decisions right now are we need to understand the marketplace so that we build the best possible facility, and seek the funding that really matches the facility. But that's not an uninformed decision. It's based on where the expertise in the Iberia Research Center already exists, and also what the local supply chains are, so we can realize some sort of cost competitive advantage, both from a workforce standpoint and also from a supply chain standpoint. So, we want to find the sweet spot. We want to find the right groupings of products or potential products. And we're not talking specific products, but in just broad classes, so that we scope the facility right, so that it's something that is attractive and will be usable by industry. And then the next step would be actually building or construction of the facility. And then finally, the recruitment of a CDMO partner, whether they're managing it or the university is managing it, or, that's where the analysis of management and an organizational structure comes in. So, from a broad standpoint, Ramesh has a pretty tight timeline in which he has to spend his capital outlay dollars for the contract manufacturing organization. Ramesh, what's the timeline you have to have the $25 million spent by?
I mean, on the BSL-3, we know the timelines are tighter because it's an 18-month time window. I mean, the governor would love to cut the ribbon on this manufacturing facility in 2 years before his term is up. So let's give him that win. So 2 years is what I would like to begin with. And but we know that this might also have to be done in a modular fashion because of the availability of monies today that will continue to grow as I continue to work on recruiting federal dollars to this. But
yeah, 2 years is running.
Yeah.
So that doesn't mean it can't happen. It's certainly quick. So can appreciate the urgency now a bit better on this. Thank you.
Yeah, and we want to make informed decisions on every step of the process. So that's the reason for this RFQ.
And then the question, this is Dave Powell, by the way, with PwC. So a related question to what you were just responding to was about the scale of the facility itself. And you mentioned about modularization. Is that the idea, is to keep there's some flexibility in how this thing scales?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's the smart move.
Yeah, and then is it? I think you've also alluded to, Chad, in your comment there, that although you're inclined to be wanting to work with a CDMO who has these capabilities, that isn't necessarily to be able to operate the facility itself. It sounds as though the door is still cracked open to suggest that may not be the case.
Yeah, we want to look at the alternatives and pick really the best choice. I think there's some wisdom in keeping some doors open until we start breaking ground.
Yeah, I would encourage you to do that. Exactly. So
yeah, and so we are not sold on any one approach versus the other. I mean, we are looking at how, for example, there are collaborations between Texas A&M and the CDMO. So we are looking at that. We've just talked to the folks from Nimble. So we know what the national network of these biopharmaceutical manufacturing CDMO players is looking like. So the landscape is obviously diverse, and the models are disparate. And so we are wanting to look at how we can build for our context and situation what might be the best approach.
Yes, and one of the things we're looking at under the scope of our EDA grant is also building an advisory group of industry folks. So identifying potential industry partners on the advisory side that could eventually be built into a consortium, which helps inform and make decisions for the facility is one of the things that we're looking at as well. And the third thing that we're looking hard at is really looking at workforce, but workforce to some extent, and workforce and curriculum development for workforce development will be heavily dependent on what is manufactured in the types of equipment that go into the facility. So that's the third leg of our EDA grant, is really looking at workforce development on the backside of this. So what you guys come up with helps determine what we do on the next phases.
Sure. That makes sense.
And it's a 2-year grant too. So.
And then you have a plot of land identified, or geography?
Yes, we have a plot of land identified, and we also need to do whatever upgrades we need to do for the water, sewer, electric, so that we can support the facility as well. So that's sort of the next set of phases too.
Sure.
But it is a certified site. It is a site that we know.
Yes, and it has all of the basics, and we could, depending on how we scale and what the scale or ramp up plan looks like, we are certainly at least adequate to start, but we would probably need additional upgrades to water and wastewater, at least in the foreseeable future.
Dr. Kaluru, this is Rohit Harvey, PwC. So definitely a visionary thing. You're thinking about more bigger scale than just Louisiana here. So that's great. One question I have here is around kind of like the modality, right? So you're in your RFP, there was a question around mRNA and other areas. Are you also looking at cell and gene therapy? Are you looking at siRNA? There's other modalities that are out there. Are you guys open to that?
Absolutely.
And I think, Jane, you guys have worked on some of that as well.
We actually are working on all of those that you're speaking of.
Fabulous.
So everything from small molecule oligos, mRNA, yeah, all of it. We're very diverse in that area too.
Gotcha. And what's the proximity to the Iberia Research Center, this location that you have identified?
It's a mile. Yeah.
1 mile.
1 mile. Fabulous.
And intentionally.
Yeah.
So with those studies and the types of clients that you just mentioned, their biggest waiting point is actually getting their materials made.
Exactly.
So they ship it to us now. We do the formulation and the administration.
Yeah, the biggest bottleneck right now is around the plastics, right? These single-use plastics. That's kind of like the Achilles heel here. What is your access to kind of like being kind of like the petroleum powerhouse in Louisiana? Do you have already access to plastics, medical grade plastics, etc.?
Absolutely, and that was one of the reasons why the idea of leveraging our workforce that is a blue collar workforce that understands chemical, petrochemical, oil and gas manufacturing, and it is not what people think of as dirty and black. It is very high technical. It is very involved, and so the workforce here knows that. The supply chains, we already have those upstream, downstream. Certainly the raw materials, the feedstocks for plastics. And that was also one of the reasons why in the immediate aftermath of COVID-19, the advent of the pandemic, one of the first in the United States companies that from an onshoring perspective that happened was a company that was called Safe Source that established its operations here in Broussard, Louisiana to manufacture PPE. Because as all of us know, there was significant shortage of PPE, and so the university was involved in helping them identify their partners from supply chain perspective that were locally able to be found within a 25-mile to 30-mile radius, so that they could establish their footprint here. and so began what has now become one of the nation's largest PPE manufacturing plants immediately after COVID-19 began.
Yeah, and I, we're kind of ideally situated. We're literally halfway between Baton Rouge and the Lake Charles Beaumont area. So within 45 minutes, you can access all of the polymers for plastics.
Fantastic.
And that did factor into what was part of the cluster as well.
Sorry, we didn't want to monopolize the time, so I don't know if others have questions.
I was going to ask just a logistic question here. So I'm looking at the RFQ. It says that either a paper copy or something gets delivered to your location. So are you not accepting anything electronic?
We could create a Dropbox or by email if necessary. Either way would be fine as well.
That's fabulous. Thank you.
Are we, what, and I apologize if it's in the materials, but the time horizon that we're looking at here would be helpful in terms of the supply-demand balance, right? Because that changes quite a bit over time. Are we contemplating the study looking at both sides of that relative to where that sweet spot is, I think, that you both are mentioning?
Yes, but I think it's attenuated by how quickly we could actually enter the market. Realistically, I see us breaking ground on this facility in about 2 years. So it would be projecting out, I guess, from that point.
Agreed.
And did you have a timeline? Did you have look, part of this is going to be you're building this facility for, a view X number of years forward, right? And obviously, the further we go out, the more fuzzy things become. Right. So do you have a timeline that you would like to have visibility to that's in your mind right now?
Ramesh, what do you think?
I'm sorry, I missed that question, but do we have a timeline could you repeat that?
Yeah, how far out do we want to project, I guess, is basically the easiest way to shorten that question.
I think 3 to 5 years, maybe, given that 2 years is what it will take to get the ground breaking, as Chad said. I know that if we can get pointed in the right direction, which would be a 3 to 5 year window, I think that would be a good place to start.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean,
usually too short a time window, to be honest.
Yeah, that's my guidance right there, is that
it may be too short. Yeah.
It's probably, when you think about development of the capabilities themselves, the cost of any transfers that may be contemplated is going to have to be amortized over, a fairly long period of time itself. Yeah. Right. So,
yep.
Look, something not that it has to be answered. I mean, we'll be part of, the way that we frame this to give some thought to it, but it's certainly going to be an important question.
Yeah. As soon as I said that, I was thinking exactly that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Well, if nobody has any other questions, we can wrap up, and we will be taking written questions through the date on the flyer through the November 11th. So you got about a week.
Yeah.
If you think of any additional questions,
we will. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure you will. Hope you do.
We're not going to let you get off the hook that easy, okay?
No, look, we hope you do, because we want the best. We want the best possible responses.
Yeah, we're passing a bunch of messages amongst ourselves right now, just to kind of formulate some thoughts, and so let us get them organized, and we'll certainly share them back with you. Certainly appreciate the opportunity as well, and as Naman has said, this is an exciting opportunity for you, for us broadly itself, and appreciate the consideration of PwC.
All right, everybody. Thank you. Thank you for your participation in the call, and we look forward to working with you.
Likewise. Thank you. Have a great one.
Folks,
Bye.
yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you all.